Hi friends, good morning. This is Dr. Reddy, Faculty for Indian Polity and Constitution. Today in this particular video, let us try to discuss the imposition of precedent rule in the state of Manipur. So very recently, the union government has declared precedent rule in the state of Manipur. So this is for the 135th time the precedent rule has been imposed in the entire country. Since independence, when the constitution has come into operation on 26th January 1950, from then till now, precedent rule has been under operation, has been declared for almost 135 times. So in this context, let us discuss what is precedent rule, what are the other names for the precedent rule, and why such a provision has been inserted in the Indian Constitution. What has been our experience with respect to implementation of precedent rule or operation of state emergency? What the framers of the Indian Constitution had in their mind while inserting this provision? What actually has happened? How things became worse? How these things have been corrected over a period of time? And if you see the Constituent Assembly debates, when Article 356 was being inserted in the Indian Constitution, many members of the Constituent Assembly, they had expressed apprehensions about inserting Article 356. Many said that Article 356 probably may be misused by the Union government. But Dr. B.R. Ambedkar had a remarkable confidence on the future Indians who are going to work the Constitution of India. So Dr. B.R. Ambedkar in the Constituent Assembly had said that Article 356 would remain as a dead letter, which means Dr. B.R. Ambedkar felt that this article will be never abused and misused. But unfortunately, in the last 75 years of Indian Republic, the experience has been something different, contrary to what Ambedkar has believed in. So contrary to what Ambedkar has believed in, Article 356, instead of remaining as a dead letter, has become a deadly weapon in the hands of the Union government. As I said just now, it has been declared under Article 356. Precedent rule has been declared so far 135 times since independence, since 1950. But in most of the situations, Article 356 was wrongly used. It was not properly used. And Punjab is the first state to come under precedent rule. And out of all the states, Jammu and Kashmir has been under precedent rule for a very long time. Then in Manipur we had precedent rule for almost 11 times, Uttar Pradesh almost 10 times. Then keep that aside, why Article 356 was inserted in the Indian Constitution in the first place? If you remember, before when India got independence, so there was a demand for partitioning the country into two dominions, India and Pakistan. So this demand was vehemently made by Muhammad Ali Jinnah. So when the Indian National Congress was not willing to concede to the demand of Muhammad Ali Jinnah, Muhammad Ali Jinnah gave a call for direct action. So as a result, communal riots broke out in the entire length and breadth of the country. So our experience has been, in the communal riots, around 10 lakh people, they were killed in the name of religion. And the provincial governments which were in place in some of the provinces were not able to deal with such violence. So when the Constitution of India was being debated in the Constituent Assembly, it was felt that if such situations come again in the Republic of India after the commencement of the Constitution, it was felt that it was necessary to have provisions in place to deal with such emergencies. So finally it was felt that when there is large scale breakdown of law and order in any particular state, and if the state was not able to deal with the violence, or if the state was not interested in dealing with the violence, the union government should not remain as a silent spectator. The union government should have the power to decisively intervene in that state, take over the administration of the state, and bring normalcy in that particular state, and then restore constitutional machinery. So the reasons why Article 356 was inserted in the Indian Constitution is on bona fide grounds. So this article was inserted keeping in mind that in extraordinary circumstances, when large scale violence breaks up in any particular state, the union government was allowed to use this power only on certain extraordinary situations with a lot of sense of responsibility. But in actual practice, this article was more abused rather than properly used. And then the President rule, the grounds for declaration of President rule, it was laid down in the Constitution of India as the constitutional breakdown. So constitutional breakdown in the state is the ground for declaration of President rule. And remember, the President rule can be declared in any state by the union government through the President. The President can declare President rule on the advice of the Union Cabinet headed by Prime Minister. And for doing this, the Union government can rely on the report of the Governor, and even otherwise, even without the report of the Governor, the President rule can be declared in a state. And once the President rule is declared in a state, it must get approval from the Parliament within 2 months. If it doesn't get approval from the Parliament within 2 months, it cannot continue beyond 2 months. Once the Parliament gives approval, it can continue for 6 months. Every 6 months, the Parliament has to give approval. And then in the Constitution of India, through the 44th Amendment, it was laid down that the President rule in any state cannot extend beyond 3 years. Initially, it will be for 1 year. 1 year. Beyond 1 year, if you want to extend President rule in any state, there are at least one of the two requirements. The first one, if the Election Commission of India certifies that elections cannot be conducted in a state for certain compelling reasons, the President rule can be extended for another 2 years, 1 plus 2 years. Or the second ground, if national emergency is in operation, then again the President rule can be extended for another 2 years. So ordinarily, the President rule will be in place for 1 year. Beyond 1 year, if national emergency is in operation, or if the Election Commission of India certifies that elections cannot be conducted for certain valid reasons, the President rule can extend for another 2 years. So maximum period is 3 years. Beyond 3 years, if you want to extend the President rule, it is necessary to amend the Constitution. For example, in the state of Punjab, the state of Punjab has been under President rule continuously for 5 years. So this was done through an amendment which was done in 1991. So the 68th Amendment to the Indian Constitution extended the President rule in the state of Punjab for 5 years. So in addition to this, see, the President rule which was implemented in several states has come under the scrutiny of the Supreme Court. So when the abuse of Article 356 became very rampant, the matter was taken before the Supreme Court in one of the cases called S.R. Bommai versus Union of India. So S.R. Bommai versus Union of India was a Supreme Court judgment which was decided in 1994 by a 9-judge bench. This judgment was delivered unanimously, and it is because of this judgment the misuse of Article 356 has greatly come down subsequently. From 1950 till 1994, the President rule has been invoked on an average 2.5 times every year. From 1994 till now, in the last 3 decades, it has been invoked on an average 1 time per year. So which means post 1994, the use of Article 356 has greatly come down. Before 1994, it was 2.5 times per year, but now it is 1 time per year. Then what is the issue before the Supreme Court? So the judgment of the Indian Supreme Court in S.R. Bommai case was remarkable in several ways. One, we have one article, Article 74. Article 74 says the President will act on the aid and advice of the Council of Ministers headed by Prime Minister, and what advice is given by the Cabinet to the President cannot be questioned in any court of law. So there was a sense of opinion that if President rule is declared in any state by the President on the advice of the Union Cabinet, it is not subjected to judicial review. It is beyond judicial review. It enjoys immunity from judicial review. That was the understanding. And even the 38th Amendment to the Indian Constitution in 1975, it has taken away the power of judicial review with respect to imposition of President rule. But fortunately, the 44th Amendment, which was done in 1978, it has laid down the declaration of the President rule in any state can be subjected to judicial review. But there are limits. So in 1994 in SR Bommai case, the Supreme Court said that we are not questioning what advice is given to the President by the Cabinet, because the President rule is declared in a state on the advice of the Union Cabinet. So the Supreme Court said in SR Bommai case, we are not questioning the advice, but we can question the material basis for the advice. So without any material basis for the advice, if President rule is declared in any state with modified intentions, then the Supreme Court can intervene. A government which is dismissed, a state government which is dismissed can be restored back to power. A legislative assembly which is dissolved can be reactivated. So this is what the Supreme Court of India has said. If President rule is declared in any state with modified intentions, the court can look into that. There is power of judicial review. And then if the President rule is declared on extraneous grounds without material basis, without bona fide intent, the Supreme Court can intervene and can restore the government back to power. So this happened in the state of Uttarakhand. It also happened in the state of Arunachal Pradesh. So in Arunachal Pradesh and Uttarakhand in the past, when President rule was declared, the matter went to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court has applied judicial review and it has declared the declaration of President rule in these two states as invalid, and the governments were restored back to power. So this has sent a very strong signal and message to the Supreme Court of India that there is Supreme Court in India to look into the actions of the Union government, and the Union government should not take the Supreme Court of India for granted. So this led to reduced misuse of Article 356. Then there are certain safeguards which were laid down in the SR Bommai case. The Supreme Court said, once President rule is declared in a state, immediately the state government can be dismissed. But the Legislative Assembly can only be suspended. It can't be dissolved. A legislative assembly in a particular state which is under President rule can be dismissed only after the Parliament gives its approval to the President rule within 2 months. So the Constitution has laid down that the Parliament has to give approval for President rule within 2 months. So within 2 months, if Parliament approves the President rule, then the Legislative Assembly in the state can be dissolved. That's one thing which the Supreme Court said. The second one, if there is any allegation that the Chief Minister of a state has lost majority in the lower house, the Supreme Court in this case said it has to be verified on the floor of the Legislative Assembly. So without verifying in the floor of the Legislative Assembly, the government cannot be dismissed. Because there were several instances in the past where the Legislative Assembly was dissolved, the governments were dismissed without verifying the majority which the Chief Minister was enjoying in the Legislative Assembly. This is one more thing. Then if you remember, after the declaration of internal emergency in 1975, after 2 years there were elections to Lok Sabha, general elections to Lok Sabha. In the general elections to Lok Sabha, Janata Party came to power and Congress suffered a major defeat. So in 1977-78, Janata Party has dismissed a Congress Party government in 9 states on the ground that people are not with Congress because they have voted to Janata Party in the elections to Lok Sabha. And within 2 years, Janata Party, which was a coalition government, did not survive for long. Then Indira Gandhi government came back to power. Indira Gandhi government, after coming to power, has dismissed the Janata Party governments in all these 9 states on the same reason, that in the elections to Lok Sabha in 1980s, Janata Party suffered a major defeat, and so it cannot continue in the state. So the Supreme Court in SR Bommai case said, if there is a general election to Lok Sabha, if any party in power at the state level suffers a major defeat in the general elections to Lok Sabha, that's not a ground for declaration of President rule in the state. So like this, several safeguards were laid down in the SR Bommai case. And surprisingly, most of the guidelines and all the guidelines which were issued by the Supreme Court in SR Bommai case, they were borrowed from the Sarkaria Commission report. So Sarkaria Commission was a commission on center-state relations. It was appointed in 1983. It gave the report in 1988. And the important recommendations with respect to use of Article 356 were borrowed by the Supreme Court into Bommai judgment from the report of Sarkaria. And SR Bommai judgment is also significant for one more reason. It is in this case, the Supreme Court has said, federalism is a basic feature of the Indian Constitution. So we all know that in Keshwananda Bharati case on 24th April 1973, the Supreme Court said, the power of the Indian Parliament under Article 368 to amend the Constitution is limited. It cannot amend the basic features of the Indian Constitution. So in SR Bommai case, the Supreme Court said federalism is a basic feature, which means federalism cannot be taken away from the constitution through an amendment under Article 368. So it's because of the intervention of the Supreme Court in SR Bommai case, the autonomy of the state governments was greatly protected through the judgment of the SR Bommai case. So this is the context in which we need to discuss the precedent rule, and I have given all the important points related to precedent rule. Thank you and all the best. We come up with another video on Indian polity which is in the news. Thank you and all the best.